anyone to feel that we have stopped talking about crime. There are different types of crime, and white collar crime is a real thing. White collar crime is defined as non-violent crime characterized by deceit to obtain or avoid losing money or to gain a personal or business advantage. And there is a conversation that happens daily on brass tacks about what criminals look like. And I think it is the most idiotic, ignorant, ridiculous conversation that happens. Crime doesn't look anyway. There's no face of crime. There are no people that are more prone than others to commit crime. At the end of the day, what we are seeing in Barbados is a societal decay. And I don't think that we should just fool ourselves that that societal decay stops with our young people or begins with them. And so when we are talking about public workers tonight, I want us to understand that we're talking about the different levels and gradations of crime, because it is with us and it is throughout our society. So with that, I want to first of all start by kind of, I guess, answering some of the critics, because, you know, I always get the flack in Barbados for being the loudmouth person who should not talk about certain things, who should not talk about the things that should stay under the very broad national carpet that we have, under the underside of which is quite dirty. But I want to say that all of the information that I'm sharing with the Marcia Week show tonight is public information. This is not any secret information that I have. I've used the website. I've used press conferences that the public workers have put out, and I've used the documents from the annual general meeting. So I'm not bringing any classified secrets from anywhere. There are some individuals that believe that this stuff should not be in the public domain, that you should deal with the systems of the credit union to voice your opinion. And I'm going to say, as with the government industrial school, I started inside. I am a person, contrary to popular belief, who can follow the process. It is when the process fails that I then do not become complicit. It is when people's views are being suppressed that I will not cower in the face of that. So at the end of the day, I've started this presentation. You should be able to see it on the screen. I registered for the annual general meeting that happened, I think it was last weekend. I registered 2 days in advance, as you were instructed to do. And this was the message that I was getting up to about 11:30 in the day of the meeting. I was not, my credentials were still being checked, which means I had no access to the meeting. I contacted individuals within the credit union to ask them, why am I being suppressed? I am a member in good standing with the credit union. Why can't I get in? And this is just one instance in several years of instances where I believe that not just myself, but other members who have spoken out about this organization have been frustrated with respect to us trying to draw the issues to attention and then, you know, to get some address with the issue. I want to start tonight because I know one of the things that the credit union used to do in early times was that it used to educate its members about the structure of the credit union and how the credit union functions, simply because knowledge is power, right? And so because we've not been doing that for a very long time, and there are a lot of people out there who are members of the credit union, but who don't necessarily understand and know how the credit union functions, I just did a quick kind of graphic and it slid here, and I apologize for that. But I want to say that unlike many companies that operate in the plantation space that is Barbados, the Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union and the credit union movement in Barbados more generally is owned by ordinary Barbadians. the majority of whom are Black Barbadians. So the shareholders of this company are local. They are our neighbors, they are ourselves. And I think that that is a very important thing to say. When we think about the structure, and this is why I wanted to visualize it, often those people who are in the positions of power in the structure don't look like us. They're not us. But in the Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union and across the credit union movement more broadly, we actually are the people who are in the seat of power. And so that's why I started with this visualization. Under us, there are 3 elected bodies of the credit union. There's the credit committee, there's the board of directors, and there's the supervisory committee. Okay, so at the next realm of power, that is who is there. Now I have the supervisory committee in a different color because the supervisory committee has a role of oversight, a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders to ensure that we are being taken care of, to ensure that the board of directors, the other elected members, the staff, everybody is doing the duty of keeping our investment afloat. That is their responsibility. So while they're on the same level as the board of directors, there are oversight powers that allow them to be able to effect strategies if they think that the board of directors has stepped out of line. At least that is what it is on paper. Under the board of directors is the group CEO. Prior to us having holdings, because the credit union, the mother credit union, what I call the mother credit union at Belmont, she has now expanded and there are other companies under her ownership. So there is a group CEO who oversees the day-to-day functioning of all of those companies. But before that, we would have just had a CEO who was dealing with the credit union. But the group CEO, because we now have other entities, that person controls them. The group CEO is responsible for the day-to-day direction of the staff. And I promise at the bottom, that BS doesn't mean what you think it means. It just means banking sector. And why I put it under there is because the truth is, I feel for a Black Barbadian who is a conscious Barbadian who understands our history and where we have come from, the credit union is a superior choice to other choices in the banking sector. So I start with the credit union and its structure first. And then if there are any other things that I can't get within the credit union, I go into the banking sector. So that's why the banking sector is at the lowermost rung of the kind of organizational chart, right? But it is important to put it there because of the ways that the financial sector has changed across the world. Now, there's nobody on this call that knows that I'm not a financial person, right? So this is a very layman, my understanding of kind of how, what I'm talking about and kind of trying to demystify it so that the average person can understand. If they understand, so can I, or if I can understand, so can they. So I want to talk about corruption and corporate culture. And I want to start kind of a little bit more with just a bit of history, because we have to know where we came from to know how we got to where we are, and how we can move from where we are. So the Barbados Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union started in 1970, right? The Barbados that the credit union started in is a very different Barbados from the Barbados that we have today. Nationalism was on the rise. Barbados was a very young country, right? And I want to make the point that the credit union did not start as a financial institution. I think it is very important to say that. What I mean by that is, I believe that the credit union started as a socialist community organization with a financial element. So it was always more than just the money aspect. It was a cooperative of like-minded individuals who not only wanted to be able to save their money or grow their money, but to do it in a specific way, to do it in a way that understood the history of the country that we live in, right? To understand how Blackness had been used against us to suppress us, how finances had been used against us to suppress us, and kind of to push back against some of that. So it has always performed a financial function, but the financial function is not the only function that the credit union has ever performed. So the effort of the cooperative society was to build community. We weren't trying to build a banking institution. We were trying to build community, but we understood that to build community, to build Black wealth, to build Black pride, to build Black family, we needed an economic basis, right? So we were trying to build community and not a banking institution, right? And I want to say that one of the ways that we understand that the mandate or the motive was not to build a banking institution in the traditional sense. The credit union does not make a profit. Whatever the credit union makes is redistributed for the good of the shareholders, whether it is paid directly in a dividend or whether it goes toward bolstering the society itself or community. There has always been this way in which it has been connected to community building. So I want you to bear that part about profit in mind as we go through the presentation. So like I said, I started to really be involved and to go to meetings around sometime around 2004. And at that time, it was clear to me that the corporate culture of the credit union was changing, that we were moving from community and socialist practice in the credit union to individualism and moving the credit union more towards the ethos of a banking institution. A banking institution is not a socialist institution. It is a capitalist institution, right? No bank in the world is set up to build any community or to support any community or to do the work of reparative justice or to do the work of economic justice for any group that has been socially marginalized, right? So there's a fundamental difference in my mind between a banking institution and the credit union and the ethos of the credit union. And I believe that as early as 2004, we started to kind of struggle with our understanding of what the credit union was and what is the ethos that was driving the credit union. From there now, I want to just talk about kind of some of the early issues that caught my attention at meetings. And again, I am not talking to you as a financial specialist. I'm talking to you as an individual, a lay person who knows enough finance to be able to manage my house and the finances of my house, but who can also listen to a narrative and pick out things that sound like they should be in the narrative versus things that don't sound like they should be in the narrative. And I remember one of the things that caught my early attention is that there was a member of the board who was driving a company car. Now, company cars are usually reserved for staff. That is my understanding. So this individual who was on the board, so who was an elected individual, was driving a company car. And not only was that individual driving a company car, but then the next year when the model of that car changed, the individual also got the recent and most updated model of the car. And all of this is in contravention, my understanding, of good practice in an institution, right? So definitely we would know that in most workplaces, you know, there are some people who are allowed to drive company cars, to have certain perks, whatever. And there are others of us who don't. Now, when people started to ask questions around that issue, we were told, oh, it's just a little issue. Why are we worrying about that? The credit union is growing. It is producing little things. And I always said from that time, the little things turn into bigger things. And remember, I talked about corporate culture and a culture of corruption, just like Barbados right now. Barbados did not have a culture of corruption and crime, but now we do, because there are a number of things that have slid over the years. And it is not just at the level of gun crime. It is not just at the level of knife crime. There are a number of things that we have not been able to address and pull back in our society. And that has led us to where we are now. Likewise with the credit union. We didn't start with the thief in the millions. That is where we are now. But we didn't start there. We started with these little kind of idiosyncrasies that I think we should have paid more attention to. One of the other things that caught my attention very early on was one of the first entities that we acquired to move us from just the credit union itself to a group of companies, as it were. And that, as everybody in Barbados knows, is when we bought Capita. And Capita is the old Clico Mortgage Finance. It was acquired in 2010 after the collapse of Clico. Everybody knows about that. Now, I remember when we bought this entity, I said to someone, I am very confused. Not that we bought the entity. I had no problem with us buying the entity. But what I couldn't understand is why the entity had to stand separate from the mother credit union. And the reason that we were given is because Capita came with a banking license. So because the rules that govern credit unions in Barbados and the rules that govern financial institutions are different, there had to be two different entities. Now, I understood that. That makes, whatever. I understood that. But here is why I say I was concerned from the beginning. Because think of the village rum shop. I know a few in Barbados, a space I quite like. Do you know any rum shop owner in Barbados who has a rum shop at the front of the house and a restaurant at the back of the house? Do you know any? I can't think of any, right? And I equated the mother credit union buying Capita as kind of us having a rum shop and a restaurant, right? Some people will say, but you can do it, because who will go in a rum shop may not, go to a restaurant, and who may go to a restaurant may not go to a rum shop, right? But the difficulty with that is that at the end of the day, if you have a rum shop and a restaurant attached to the same house in one village, there's a finite amount of client that you have that is going to support either space, right? And this has always been a concern. It's something that is still not resolved in my mind. How are the two how are the two clienteles of Capita and the credit union different? I don't know that. So for me, one of the issues that we had in the beginning was our plan around the two entities. I still am not clear about the business model, right? One of the other things very early that caught my attention about Capita is that we were getting consolidated financial statements for both entities. So although we had these two separate entities, we were being given a set of financials for both of them. And that may make perfect sense to financial people, but it didn't make sense to me. I wanted to see the nitty-gritty. And I remember passing a motion on the floor of the meeting that actually we ended up getting that separation. We ended up getting the separation so we can now see Capita's financials, the mother credit union's financials, but then we can also see them in a consolidated format, because I feel as though we should know what each is doing. The oversight of Capita was also one of the things that caught my attention. And of course, for obvious reasons, Marcia, to keep all of us safe, I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to ask, who headed Capita when we bought it? Who headed it? Who was the first head of Capita? And was the first head of Capita involved in any way on the board that bought Capita? Now, if you and I, Marcia, are going to buy a company, right? We would not want either you or me to head the entity that we buy, because it could be said that you or I would be conditioned by the decisions that we are making if we knew there was a benefit to us directly in the company that we bought. So to my mind, we would want to buy this company, but then we would want to make sure that the oversight of the company that we bought was completely separate from those of us who bought the company, right? It just looks good. It is financial sense. It stops this idea that there is insider trading then. So I'm going to ask, who headed Capita? And what were the connections of the person that headed Capita and the board that bought Capita? So my granny always used to say, when you start wrong, you're in wrong, right? Now, that this insider trading, these tightly knitted relationships between elected officials and then who is hired as staff, etc., who is having relations, romantic, otherwise, whatever, with whom, and who is then getting work and getting positions, is something that, again, started very small. And now, to my mind, it is at crisis proportions within this organization, right? So these are some of the early issues which have remained and which have not, to my mind, been resolved reasonably. One of the other things that caught my attention was procurement within the organization. So procurement basically is, how does the organization get the things it needs to function? How does it buy pins? How does it buy land? How does it go about acquiring space to operate in? You think of anything, all of those things are called procurement, right? Now, the building of the Six Roads branch had a lot of questions around it. So we're talking about the period of 2016 and before, right? We can look at the contractor costs, right? We can also look at the fact that we were building out branches across the island. I have no problem with that. We had, around this same time, a piece of land that we owned at Warrens. Warrens at that time was not, kind of the corporate area it is now, but it was up and coming, right? We decided not to develop the land that we owned at Warrens, and we decided to rent a piece in Mile and a Quarter. Well, that was such a mess that we ended up having to fight for a forensic audit. And again, I was one of the people that was behind that. There are a group of people that I've been working with for a number of years, the concerned members of the credit union. And we agreed that we would pass a motion to have a forensic audit. And that vote passed, and there is now a forensic audit. Now, I have to be very careful, like I said the last time, how I speak about that, because in order to gain access to the forensic audit, you sign a non-disclosure agreement. So it means that I can't have a conversation with you about it here. Mm-hmm. But what I want is I want every single member of the Barbados Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union, every member, go to the credit union and request your copy of the forensic audit surrounding the Mile and a Quarter branch. That is your right. And if you do not understand what is being said, you can then have a conversation with, I don't know, a Caswell Franklin, a Glyde Murray, a Maxine McLean. As long as you're not doing it in the public domain, right? The non-disclosure that you sign does not stop you from getting the information that you need to understand what is in your hand. It stops you from talking about it in the public domain, right? So I want everybody who has an interest in this entity to go and get the forensic report and read it.
So Marsha, we need to go and get this forensic report, and you can get this from the you can apply for it
any branch of the credit union.
Any branch
of the credit union, and you request your copy of the forensic audit.
Forensic report.
Okay, Marsha,
we have 10 minutes. You think we this sounds like Animal Farm, really. But can we do this in 10 minutes?
I'm gonna rush through. So what I'm gonna do?
You can come back. You can come back on Friday. So go ahead.
That's okay. So I'm gonna finish the PowerPoint presentation tonight, and then we can leave the rest then for some other time.
Because I think it's very important what you're doing. So take another. Take another 8 minutes then, since you're coming.
That's okay. That's okay. So the procurement policy and project implementation is one of the other things that caught my attention over the years of going to the meetings at the Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union. The procurement policy, in my humble layman estimation, is weak. And the way that we know it is weak is because, like I said, we are not plugging the holes that we need to plug to make sure that our institution is strong, right? And I can, again, go back to documents that are provided, the annual general statements, whatever, the supervisory report, and I can show you how I'm coming to that. So I'm not trying to slander anybody here. I'm not trying to cause any trouble, but I will not be complicit. Because unlike Clico, whatever happens, nobody can say, well, you didn't know. Well, why nobody tell me? No, we can't say that this time because I am ringing the alarm bell and I have been ringing it for some time now. I also want to talk about our GCEO at the credit union. Again, who is the GCEO of the credit union? That is public information. I'm not bringing any tales from under my bed or, you know, everybody, that is public information who the GCEO of the credit union is. He joined the institution, the GCEO joined the institution in 2018. And there are some questions that need to be asked specifically around that joining of the credit union, but we will leave that and we will come back to that another time. What I want to finish with now is some of the things that we have tried to do as membership of the credit union that have been thwarted by different individuals who get the benefits of the holes that we are trying to plug. I want to talk about the ways that we have tried to plug some of those holes and the ways that we have been frustrated. So one of the documents that I sent to you today, Marcia, was a series of resolutions that we tried to get on the floor of the 2022 annual general meeting. And what a resolution does is that the cooperative societies in Barbados are governed broadly, globally, by the Cooperative Societies Act 378A. But in addition to that, there are a series of bylaws that specifically govern every credit union. And when you want to change those bylaws or add to those bylaws, you put a resolution on the floor of the annual general meeting for the consideration of the meeting and then for the meeting to vote on the resolutions. So because of what we saw happening year after year at the credit union, we decided to put a number of resolutions on the floor of the 2022 meetings, including but not limited to one that spoke about term limits. So I remember way back when I used to be driving home with my mommy and she was listening to Tell It Like It Is. One of the hot issues on Tell It Like It Is used to be interlocking directorships in the companies, the white companies in Barbados, and how that stops us from being able to adequately manage and run these companies. Well, we had a lot of interlocking directorships within the credit union too. We had a lot of people who were jumping from the board to supervisory, to the credit committee, back to the board, back to, it was problematic. So we wanted to have credit limits to ensure that individuals were cycling out. That is both a function of good governance, but it also makes sure that in an entity with XYZ members, they're always talking about how many members they have, that different people get the opportunity to learn and to serve, right? One of those resolutions to today, as I speak to you, has been addressed. One, and that is the one about term limits. And we had to fight. And we had to fight a director taking us to court, right? They talk about the reputational damage that people like me are doing to the credit union by coming and educating the members of the credit union, which the credit union is supposed to be doing, right? But is it not reputational damage when we have a director who dares to sue us, take an injunction against us that stopped the elections at the annual general meeting of 2023, all because we were saying to him, we appointed you and we are now disappointing you. We were dragged to court. We can also say that directors who go overseas and cause debacles on international flights and are put off of them while they're wearing the logo of the Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union also cause reputational risks. But don't let me get into that now because my time's short. Let me stick to the slide that I'm trying to complete, right? In terms of the bylaws, put a number of them. One of them has come into place, and we are still fighting the board to this day to be able to put the rest in place. Cooling off periods. So we have people who jump from being staff of the credit union onto the board. Now, if you are a staffer, you're doing something nefarious. You get on the board, you have ultimate power then to cover down what you have done as staff. We got people on the board jumping from the board to become staff members of the organization. Again, problematic because of why I explained to you just now. I can't buy a company and then turn around and be the head honcho of the company. It's insider trading. We had all of that going on, and we have been trying to get these bylaws as members to control this runaway train that we have. And up to now, we can't get the things addressed. We have a corporate redesign that is bleeding the institutional memory of the Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union. All the people that when I started with the credit union was young like me, and we come up now and all, we got gray hair, old children now, people that you could go in and you could smile with, and you know, your children gone through together, and that a relationship, a family, which is a part of what the credit union is. Remember, I talk about the community building. Every one of them have been now decimated by this corporate redesign. But this corporate redesign, when it was brought to the membership of the credit union, we were sitting down in the Olive Trotman Hall. I remember it like yesterday, right? And we said to our board, we are not comfortable with this corporate redesign. It's not ringing right to us. We want you to put it on pause. Go and get some information for us and come back to us. You know that we are remember the chart that I said, we are the top of the totem pole with respect to the control, the power of the credit union. You know that the GCO and the board still carry out the corporate redesign. A corporate redesign, when well done, takes 2 to 3 years. We have been in a corporate redesign now for 6 to 7 years, the cost of which we still are not clear about, right? The institution, people, membership of the credit union visibly feeling and seeing the changes, right? And this is something that the board and the GCO have done without the sanction of the board of the credit union. I can stop there, Marcia. I will stop there because I will respect time. But I am telling the people of Barbados.
Marsha, listen, this is the guest who was on, let me try to get on here. The guest, Don, was supposed to be on. He's a CPA. And he heard you, and he said, Marcia, he said, let this lovely lady take her time. He wrote me at 8:47, and I wanted to hear him, but he said, let's postpone for now so that this lovely lady here can take her time. So, go ahead. We will do another 10. I think isn't this great education, guys?
You gotta educate the public. You gotta educate the public. I don't understand why all of a sudden we want high things on the bushels from people. A part of our independence movement in Barbados was education. It wasn't just to jump up and say we live in a democratic society. No, we live in a republic. No, we live in a republic. We live in a republic where the girl children in the government industrial school were some of the first victims under the republic. And up to now, they haven't got any money and damages that the court said is supposed to get. What kind of republic we live in? Don't let's only the crime in the road is important, and not but the crime that is going on across the entities in Barbados is also important. We can't fix our society but by just looking at the people in Barbados who hungry and tired and fed up with good reason and say, oh shoot, what are we gonna do with these people, without asking the question, why are the people who are our leaders behaving the same way that the people in the road behaving, or worse? And I don't understand why. So let me go now to a bank of questions that I had to complement my slide, right? I want to ask the question, were we ever paying contractors at the credit union when there were no contracts in place? This is an issue that came up on the floor of an AGM about 2 to 3 years ago and floored everybody in the meeting. I am not bringing tales out of school. Get the minutes of the meeting. and it should be reflected within the minutes of the meeting, right? Let's come back to the GCEO appointment, right? I want to ask questions. I don't know. These are the things I have been trying to get answers to using the channels within the credit union. So now I come to the Marcia Week Show because I realize that even the people that does moderate brass stats does come to the Marcia Week Show now for information and carry it back. So I come here to ask my questions, right? I want to know if the GCEO of the Barbados Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union is on a permanent contract. And I want to know if that is the standard for comparative positions across Barbados. Because my, again, layman understanding is you will hire a GCO on a 3 to 4 year contract. So that if the GCO is not performing, so that if you want to carry out a corporate redesign, so that if you need an out clause of any kind, you can get rid of that individual without too much trouble being money. But I want to know if the credit union has a permanent or something like a permanent GCEO. I want to know if that said GCEO receives a gratuitous payment every year that is not tied to a performance review. And I want to know if it has ever happened in the credit union before. Now, remember, I said to you, the credit union does not make a profit. It is not a for-profit. A cooperative society is kind of the same thing as a civil society organization. It is a not-for-profit entity, right? So my question is, if you have a not-for-profit entity, how does an individual receive yearly gratuitous payments, which would look very similar to bonus payments in other financial institutions? Why would we spend that money that way, as opposed to making sure that the poorest people in Barbados, who are the ones that the credit union is set up to serve, benefit from that? I want to ask. I asking questions. Nothing at all wrong with a question. I want to know if under this GCEO and HR manager, is it the first time in the history of the Barbados Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union that we have ever had industrial action? I want to know. And then I want to know who is the Chief Human Resources Officer at the credit union. Again, people, use Google. It is there. This is not, I am not telling any secrets. If you look at the AGM document, you will see the nice glossy pictures of everybody. Who is the Chief Human Resources Officer? Who is it? And where was this individual employed before? These are questions that you need to ask so that you can understand who is sailing your ship. When we want to know if people are suitable for a role, this is the kind of information that we look for, right? When you do your CV, you want to see, oh, this person had experience X place, Y place, Z place. I'm not asking any out of place questions. I want to know if there were any other major strikes at any of the institutions that that individual was connected to. A reasonable question. A reasonable question. If we have never had strikes before and now we have them, we got to look for what are the common denominators. I just asking questions. Is the GCEO making almost $30,000 a month with a company car? Questions. I want to know if the average teller at the Barbados Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union make $2,500 before tax monthly. Questions. I think all of these are things when we're looking at the strength of our entity, you know, when we thinking about it, these are the things that we need to know. I want everybody to pay attention to the management structures of the credit union and the political process and how it works. Because I am sure that on this show before, we have talked about how the political process in Barbados has been co-opted, right? How we have these political processes in Barbados now they seem less than democratic, right? I have heard for several years about the connections between, for example, gifts and money and those kind of things, and people voting, and people going en masse in buses to vote and all this kind of thing. I want to know if a similar thing happens at the credit unions. The people of Barbados better wake up. The crime is not just gun crime. It is not just gang crime. We have a crisis in our nation. And I think that if we look at the white collar crime, if we look at all the other crime, we will really get a sense that we are inside a very vicious ecosystem. Don't only look inside the road and feel, oh, well, it's not me. I go home to my middle class house. I safe. It is problematic. I want to know if we have spent more money in the 20-year period that I have been paying attention to the Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union and all that is going on. I want to know if in that period we have spent more money traveling the board than we have spent training the staff. Because I hear people talking about the way that the culture has changed. And I know that the culture is training, but I don't want me to blame the staff. I don't want us to take the symptom and make the symptom the problem. Likewise, with the individuals in Barbados who have now resorted to the gun and the knife and the chopper. Do not let us punish these individuals for what are symptoms. If we spend more money traveling the board than we spend training the staff, then obviously the experience that we get within our financial institution, within our community institution, within our credit union, it will change. It will change. Let me come back to the corporate redesign now. Let me ask a battery of questions around that. I want to know if the GCEO of the credit union is a graduate of the Harrison College. And I want to know if the president under whose tenure he came is also a graduate of Harrison College. Questions. Because, we have this thing in Barbados called the old school tie. We know how that works, who is to have and who is not to have is conditioned by where one went to school and who family and who in who lodge. Don't let me pretend that these are not the issues, right? Don't let's pretend that this is why some people in our society can get jobs and have opportunities and other people got to be frustrated and sit down on the periphery of the society. Right? I want to know if one of the chief architects of the corporate redesign is also a graduate of Harrison College. I want to know if all of these individuals were at the school during the same time. Because sometimes we just see things play out and we're like, oh, but that is strange. But I ain't really sure why it's strange. But when we ask these questions, we connect the dots. Sometimes they're not so strange anymore. Right? I want to understand why we have a lack of a succession plan at an institution that is now, they always tell you $1 billion, $1 billion. They say all $1 billion. Like it is $1 billion institution because the people of Barbados have sacrificed to make it such, right? But because it is $1 billion institution, it is also one that we really have to pay attention to because none of us can have anything else happen but a good thing because all of us have too much invested in this particular entity. When we're talking about we see what just happened with the fishing industry. We see, right? The credit union should be in a significant position to put forward leadership on the fishing industry. It can't. You know why? All the lean, all the fat has been carved off, and there is no lean. So when we are supposed to be in a position to help our community and rebuild our community, I put it to you that we are not in a position to do it because of what has been happening. And every single time, the last time I was on this show, I talked about an expense that happened. And the next day, somebody sent out a a WhatsApp all over the place. Oh, don't let me look at one board member. There are bigger fish to fry. I want to fry all. I want to fry all. Everybody that thieving from this entity needs to be dealt with. Because the thing about it is now we come from individuals having a car that they shouldn't have and having 2 cars that they shouldn't have. They ain't thieving in the hundreds now, nor the thousands. They're thieving in the millions. I want all back, because that is the money that we should be able to take now and give to our fisher folk to rebuild their community. That is what the credit union is about. It's not about paying nobody these exorbitant salaries, a whole host of managers all over the place, and the people of Barbados get nothing for it. It is wrong. It is wrong, right? Let's talk about some of the current indicators. I near done. And let me say that what is happening here, we have to ask the questions, where are the regulators? I am not a financial person. I am not. If I can see and understand what I am reading and seeing, then the financial people and the regulators gotta be in a better position than me to see and understand what they're seeing and reading. In 2023, Capita was fined $18,500 by the regulators for failure to submit on-time financials. But then, in response to a question from the floor at the last AGM, which is adjourned, so it is supposed to come again in 2 weeks' time, so people can pay attention, right? The GCEO, when asked about Capita and the performance of Capita, said, "Oh, I guess it's people like me who bring in the inside business to the credit union on the road that are causing reputational damage, and they had to take a time to fix that back and all of this and all of this." You think that financial people who looking to invest people's money worry about what I saying on the Marcia Reed show? I am a financial body. You know what they're gonna look at? They're gonna look at the fact that this is an entity that was just charged $18,000 for not failing on-time financials. That means more to them than anything that I can say. And those are the indicators that they are going to be looking at. And those are the indicators within this organization that are going in the wrong direction. Right? So me educating the public about what is happening can't be any worse than the fact that we have a chief financial officer, all of these people. I remember the year that this went down on the floor of the AGM. The chair of the supervisory committee mouth drop open, because at that time, she didn't know that we get a fine. You know what I tell you? We get a fine, and the supervisory committee chair, who is put there to defend the rights of the ordinary shareholders of this credit union, they know that it had happened. Right? I want to do some numbers now, baby numbers, because like I said, I ain't hiding from nobody. Numbers are, Marcia, your thing, Dawn thing, Kimar thing, not my thing. But let me tell you some of the things that jump out at me. Let's look at 2016 to 2024, right? And let's look at that as a little snapshot. Like I said, if you want more, you can go back from 2004 for a fuller longitudinal picture, right? Between 2016 and 2024, let's look at the net income of the credit union, right? And the net income basically is the money after everything else is taken out, right? It stands on average about 15.5 million. So 2017, it was 15.5 million, and our operating costs were 62.5 million. The operating costs are the things that it takes to keep the operation going. Paying staff, managing buildings, buying ink, whatever. So 15.5 million, 62.4 million was our operating costs. 2018, our profit, or net income, 17.4 million, and we had steady operating costs. Now let me come to 2020. 18.4 million was our net income, and the operating cost is 82.2 million. 2024, our net income is 10.2 million, and the operating cost is 88.3 million. No, them numbers too big for me. So let me talk about what I know about. If I get a salary of $200 when the month comes, right? and my operating cost against the $200 is $50. My salary remains relatively the same, but now this year the salary is $200 and the operating cost $175. Why are my operating costs going in the wrong direction, and the money that I have is not improving? So let me say there's an opportunity to work a double shift, but I need a car because then the bus don't come. Not like I talking about living in St. Philip in Barbados, nor St. George, nor nothing. So it's really just a story that came out the top of my head, right? So I want to work these 2 shifts, but I need a car to work them. So I take on a loan. Okay, fine. My operating cost though may be $220 because I got to service the loan, but I may be making now $1,000. I am not saying that operating costs going up is a problem. But at the end of the day, if my operating costs are going up, I expect that what I am getting for those operating costs is still going up. I promise you that when individuals are looking at our institution, it is these markers that mean more to them than anything that I am saying. And before anybody come in and talk about, oh, COVID, this and that, nope. These are figures that factor in the recovery post-COVID. You also have to ask the question, if you want to talk about COVID, what are other companies, other comparative companies across Barbados doing, right? So at the end of the day, these are the things that are concerning. I am asking Barbadians to pay attention. Pay attention. The operating costs have to be considered in the context of the credit committee report that accepts that the loan turnaround at our credit union is a major concern, and the loan portfolio is seeing the results of that, right? So one of the reasons given for the poor turnaround on loans and the effect on loans is that we don't have adequate staff. So the $88.3 million is not including the staff that we need to be able to turn around loans. But loans is how the credit union makes its money. So what are we hiring? What is causing those operating costs to burgeon like that? Is it the highly paid and bloated managerial staff that we have? I want to know. The GCEO at the last AGM announced now that we're moving towards a loan processing center. The credit union is not a bank. It is not a bank. And where the bank can process loans in Jamaica, in Trinidad, and wherever, a part of the culture and the ethos of the credit union is for an individual to be able to go in and sit down and talk to an individual. It is the personal relationship. It is that very relationship that some of us don't pass with the bank because there's not that personal connection. We are not trying to turn the credit union, or in my humble opinion, we should not be trying to turn the credit union into a banking institution. We should not be separating the people and the loan officers. We should be pulling them together, because that is the magic of the credit union. And at the end of the day, don't tell me that magic doesn't work for us, because many of people who can qualify for a bank loan come back and pay back 3 and 4 and 6 and 7 loans for the credit union and never miss a payment. Or even if they miss the payment, there was a relationship that we could manage it. So it is a part of the magic of the credit union. What loans processing center walked. What we need is a GCEO that can really run our institution. Capita needs a business plan. That's not rocket science. I told you about the rum shop and the restaurant. We have 2 entities that it looks like to me are competing against each other for the same pie. Let me talk about the banking license real quick, that they said made Capita this valuable asset that we had to purchase. Marcia, we have not done anything with the banking license. Nothing at all. We haven't done anything with it. And you want to hear something? The license obsolete. Because what we now need to open a banking institution, we didn't need then. I telling you that banking license ain't worth the paper right on today. because we cannot get correspondent banking in our current state. We can't get it because of the problems that we have with governance. Because at the end of the day, remember, inside Barbados, you can do as you like, right? But when you're taking that money internationally to America and Canada and ting, is a different story. Ask a man down in St. James South. He know about it real good. Different. You could do whatever you feel like in Barbados. But once that money crossing a border, is a different situation completely. So the banking license ain't worth the paper that you write on. That's my layman's understanding of it. Useless. Right? I gonna be done now. I gonna be done. And Marcia, you can stop me whenever you want to stop me. Let me look at the
you go on. Kimar is supposed to come on at 9:30, but you go on.
I would like Kimar to come after me some at a time. Not that I'm giving him homework or anything, but I would love to see Kimar go into these financials, and I would love to see what he pulls out, because I must tell you, I like how your man mind. I like how his mind works. So I would love to see him go inside the financials and even be able to look at them in a way that I self can look at them. I would love to hear what he comes up with. But let me look at the health of the group. The report of the board in this current AGM. Allied Insurance, which is one of the a part of the group that we have at the credit union now, that attracted the attention of the board, right? The company is seeking, this is a company that was set up to offer services to smaller credit unions and that kind of thing, whatever. I want to ask the question, again, is it true that the sluggish implementation has resulted in some of the business of that Allied was set up to do being co-opted by other players in the market, leaving Allied now in a position where it has to look for new market share? I want to ask a question. And I also want to ask if this mimics what happened with the credit card that we had said we were going to offer, and that other credit unions were then going to buy into for us to share costs and this and that and whatever, but which we know now some of the other credit unions have opted not to buy into because of some of the issues and the complications. So we talk about this billion-dollar company, but when we look at the health of the individual members of the group, I think that there are questions to be asked and answered. Right? And I keep saying oversight is an issue. Oversight in the organization is loose. That is why I say we will never be able to turn that banking license that we have now into anything that makes sense in a 2024 banking context. Absolutely cannot do it. Right? I want to know, a part of the corporate redesign that I was vehemently opposed to is that we were collapsing the risk and the compliance officer. The two roles are similar, but they're not the same. But just in the interest of time, I'm going to explain to people, these are kind of the oversight functions of the credit union. Independent professionals who help you to be able to meet your statutory obligations, to make sure that the way that you are carrying out your business poses no risk to the shareholders of the organization, right? And we collapsed the two of them. I was vehemently opposed to that. We also wanted to change the line of reporting from them reporting directly to the board to reporting to the GCEO. Madness, because the chief risk and compliance officer, a part of who they are managing in their functions, is the GCEO. They should not report to him. Anyway, they went ahead outside of the membership, the permission of the membership, and they collapsed these two roles, right? And they brought an individual, highly qualified black person, an individual. I want to know if it is true that that individual was on probation for 18 months and was never made permanent. And when you see something like that within a financial institution, that in itself should be a red flag to the regulators. Because at the end of the day, there's nobody alive who will be honest and call the risk of an organization out when they themselves are not in a permanent position. So what you have done is that you are frustrating the work of the individual. I want to know if we have ever made donations from our charity arm to members of staff. Oversight, liquor, problematic, all kinds of conflicts of interest. I want to know how we vet members of the board. Again, something that has caught my attention over the years. If you are running a $1 billion company now, from a company that started, I think the first year or net reported income was $1,000. We are now at $1 billion. Oversight is important. If we're using the same mechanisms as when we had the $1,000 to vet these people who are on the board, we have a problem, right? I want to know if we have ever had a board member on the board with outstanding bankruptcy or debt issues. All of this is why the license income is used to us, because we can get correspondent banking with these kind of issues going on. If they're going on, I don't know. I asking questions. Did we have a board member living outside of the jurisdiction but still receiving the board stipend? I want to know. I want to know. Board members that will run around telling people, oh, she just got a lot to say about the credit union, but one time she come pay she loan. It ain't a lie. When I was a full-time student, a full-time PhD student at the University of the West Indies, things are tight. But at the end of the day, nobody can get here and say, I have a thief. Any of the money that I was working with women and girls, nobody never skimmed me up over or under to pay my light bill, phone bill, water bill. I ain't ashamed that I struggle. But when I struggle, you know what I do? I went and stand up in front of Belmont counter like everybody else. And I said, look at my hair, I have mercy. So to feel now that is going to be something to stop me from talking, no, this is too important. It is too important. I will talk till I die. I will talk till I die. Right? I want to know the credit committee, like we said at the beginning of the presentation, is one of the elected boards of the credit union, one of our boards that must be elected in our management structure. There's a position within that committee that has not been filled, and I want to know why. I want to know if we are struggling to attract professionals to serve because of the reputational risks. Because again, Marcia, this is a different world. And for individuals to go and to align themselves with this kind of operation, you are now taking your profession within your hand, because you know what the requirements are. If you only want work in Barbados, that is one thing. But if you want to be considered by individuals outside of Barbados, if you want to do certain jobs in certain offshore companies, the UN, if you want to have a career, you can risk certain things reputationally. So I want to know if we are struggling to attract professionals to serve because of reputational risk. I am asking. And I want to know if what is supposed to be an elected position will then be selected by the board, and what is the implication for this for the separation of powers. I am sorry that I took so long, Marcia. I did not mean to disregard the time, but I want Barbadians to talk about crime with a capital C, white, blue, black, orange. We have to pay attention to all of it. What we are fighting for right now is the soul of our country. Mm-hmm. And it is not only those young boys with the guns and the knives that are destabilizing this country. It is not only them.
Marsha, this is such an important segment, I tell you. I am just sitting here thinking about this, Mr. Murray, and the way how you started, the giving the history of the credit union, how it started, what were the objectives, looking at poor people and how people were pooling their monies together and all of that, and to the kind of questions that you're asking tonight. It makes me wonder what has happened to us. What is happening to us? I don't. Let me just turn your mic off, Mr. Murray, until you're ready to speak. I don't know what is really happening to us here in Barbados. What is going on? These are questions that are being asked. People are talking about, oh, should I pull out my money? Nobody on here is telling you anybody about pulling out any money. Please. All Marcia is doing is asking questions on behalf of the people of Barbados, the average persons of Barbados, who the credit union is supposed to be serving, and to ask, where are the regulators? Where are the regulators? These are questions, and what we're going to do, I saw, is it Alvin or somebody said it, we're going to take this section out and just have it there as education is to us to be able to use it. But let me go to Mr. Murray. We literally have 3 minutes before T-Mar comes on. Mr. Murray, go ahead.
Yes. I want to thank um, Dr. Murray for her presentation. It's an eye-opener. I'd heard some of these stories some time ago, but now it had mushroomed into festering, corrupt. It's unbelievable. I say so because I have a background in the credit union. I was at one time president of the credit union at the then nation. So I'm familiar with the operation. But two things. One question, then I make an observation. Is there still a registrar of cooperatives? Government, there's a body and an office used to be filled by paid for by government with registrar of cooperatives who's to keep an eye on the operation of the credit union system. Secondly, people at this credit union need to be aware that it is not too big to fail. You talk about CLECO. I'm not sure if Marsha might remember it. There was also trade confirmers. But long before that, and this one is illustrative because it marks a history of Black people starting institutions, other Black people driving it in the ground. There used to be a bank called the Mackey Simmons Bank, a penny bank. That failed. And that tarnished and that discouraged other Black people. I think it was the 1920s, 30s. Ever since then, we've been paying the price for that, for the dishonesty that went the whole episode. I hear you saying repeating itself again. It really is quite, it's really quite unforgettable. And I think Marsha is doing a fantastic public service by bringing it to the public. I had no idea that this thing had gone. I'd heard about the project down in Spikestown and whatnot, but no, it's gone way past that. And the last thing I want to say is that I've observed in the credit union long before both this and other credit unions that they're becoming they're operating though they're corporate bodies now. They've forgotten, like Mark said, all their connections and all their commitment. And the first person is the client, the membership, and they operate with credit cards and expense account. And it's coming out of the operating savings and benefits of the workers of the members, and they're actually thieving from the members. It really, and for boards to allow that is horrifying. It's disgusting. I really am quite let down by the credit union for this to go on and nothing is being done about it. And the exact opposite instead.
I think the registrar of cooperatives, as I understand it, and maybe there are people with more information here, I think all of those were rolled into the Financial Services Commission. So the Financial Services Commission is now the regulator of credit unions. And I have written numerous letters asking, begging, beseeching, I don't know what are the words, for the Financial Services Commission to become involved and to help the members of the credit union to try to right this ship. And for whatever reason, you can't get any kind of action. Actually, I want to ask the question, if we have ever had, again, questions, people need to do research. People need to do research. And this is Marcia, you know, you and me, we just have but this is the one thing I love about this show. It encourages people to get involved and to understand that everything that you want to know is within your reach. I want to know if we ever had a CEO of the credit union and a head honcho of the Financial Services Commission that bore the same last name. I want to know if the two of them served in the two entities at the same time. And I want to know if there's any significance behind the last names. Questions. I don't know. I'm not casting aspersions. These are things that I see with my big two eyes and my big two glasses. And they look like questions that we should ask. So I asked them. And I don't, if we want a society that is transparent, that is honest, then I don't see what's the problem with asking questions. I don't see. Right? And when you ask questions of this entity, you know, they say, Duppy know who to frighten, highway know where old house live. Right? There are some people who are threatened with legal letters. You know that story well. I have not gotten any up to this point, but when they're ready for me, my attorney at law is Anya A. Lord. So they can send the letter there and she will be sure to dispatch it. Because I will not be complicit with the foolishness that is going on in this institution. There was a discussion at the board about whether they can revoke my membership or not. If they want to do that, they can do that too, but they better come good. They better come good because, like I said, none of the information that I've never sat on the board at the credit union. I've never had any inside information from anywhere. All of it is public records. All of it is public records. All of it is available to anybody who wants it. And I do not understand why we would want individuals to sit by and see such a critical institution in crisis and not say, we are in crisis, something is wrong here.
You know, somebody is asking here, the Financial Services Commission, somebody's agreeing with you that that they are the regulators of the credit union. But the question is, what is the relationship of the Financial Services Corporation with the Ministry of Finance, the FSC, and the Ministry of Finance? Is there a relationship?
Those are the questions. These are the questions. These are the questions. Who chooses, who serves, who chooses the board? Mm-hmm. All of these are questions that we need to, this is why I'm saying, Marcia, we as Barbadians, and I agree with you, Barbadians are not docile. We are not stupid people. We need to start to connect the dots, and we need to stop talking about these things as if they're not related. Mm-hmm. Right? We need to connect the dots, and we need to follow the dots if we are really going to understand the level of destabilization that we have in this country, what we are really fighting and facing.
Well, Marsha, this has been a real eye-opener, and a lot to think about. I know she was going really fast, but I think that I mean, this has been like, oh my God, what is this? And to, you know, the part of it that I'm struck with is the way you began, because it's the objective of the credit union, and to see what it looks like actually, because we don't know. You're asking these questions. You know, it pains us because we're talking here about Black people. And again, you know, we talk about black on black crime right now. The guys that are shooting on each other in the streets are black guys killing. You know, to Indians out there killing, and white people shoot. White people have enough guns in this country. Everybody know that. You know, I mean, they have enough guns. You know, in the country they have registered guns. Some of these homes have 2-3 guns in there. But you don't see them on the thing like shooting one another in the cane field and running up and down. is black people shooting black people on the street, and a lot of these kinds of things that's happening even in the white collar level. It's black people hurting.
That's right.
Poor black people. Some of us, we move up and we get 2 cars and a big house and whatever, and now we turn around and trampling those that are at the, we think are at the bottom. And you know, it's these kinds of things. But Marsha,
thank you.
I tell you,
We'll talk
thank
again.
you so much.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it very much, and we're gonna chat again because we have to do some kind of follow-up on this. Okay.
For
God
sure.
bless you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.